Hey everyone, welcome back to the second episode. I just wanted to give you a recap. The first episode, we talked about my upbringing, where I was born, where I was raised, the move to the coast, where we lived in the coast, my salvation, and much more. In this episode, I really wanted to start to lock in and talk about when my health started to decline and sort of the slow breakdown of when I started to gain my symptoms to the discovery of trying to find doctors and diagnosis. So, just me thinking back now as I sit here, I'm tracing back all the way to 2023. And that's when I started to gain symptoms that we really didn't know the meaning behind yet. I was having weird fainting, hot flash episodes, you could say, where I just would become very fatigued. There was a point where we just called it dehydration because it felt like I couldn't retain fluid or keep any liquid in my system. There was a time, it was right before recital, where I just spent about 5 days in bed and I really didn't understand that 5 days passed. I was so fatigued, kind of sick in a way, where I wasn't eating much, I wasn't drinking much, and then my days and nights just became completely unknown. And then we just kind of left it there. Like, we're going to take hydration, we're going to take the liquid IV, and we're going to try to drink as much water as possible. And then we just called it dehydration because I got better. Every once in a while after that, I would find, oh, I'm dehydrated again. Like, I gotta drink more water. Like, I'm not feeling good. I'm getting lightheaded. And then random episodes, I call episodes now, random spells where I would have to go and like prop my feet up and elevate them above my head and heart to hopefully help me feel better when I was filled with nausea. But we again still called it, I'm just not feeling good. We got to figure out what's going on. Am I eating the right amount of food? Am I drinking enough water? And that was kind of just the rhythm that I was going through. It honestly wasn't until just about 2 years ago where I had a big old thing happen. I knew something was wrong that day when I collapsed in the bathroom floor. One second I was standing curling my hair for church, and then the next thing, my body betrayed me and my knees buckled, my hands slipped, and mid curl of a strand of my hair, I was just on the floor. Like there was nothing in my vision except black. Honestly, it wasn't dramatic. Like there was no spinning, no sound of crashing. To be honest with you, I was curling my hair just a few minutes before this big wave of unbearableness happened, and I kind of just felt this big wave of nauseousness that I felt. I was so nauseous, and I literally was doubled over, mind you, while I was curling my hair because, we're on that time crunch and we're trying to get to church. And my last thoughts before everything went dark was what is happening to me because, you know, it's normal as a person to just feel fatigue. And since I had already experienced so much dehydration, like I said, I was kind of used to feeling kind of uneasy. And my pain tolerance has always been very, very low. I would definitely admit that I'm a little bit of a baby when it comes to things that could cause hurt. So when I felt this nauseousness, I never really stopped. I didn't really think of it as an option to stop. I was like, yes, it's going to be fine. Let me keep curling my hair. But when I woke up, I was on the floor and my heart was just hammering. And I blinked at the ceiling, like completely disarrayed, distraught. And I was unsure if I had just fainted or if I fell asleep, oddly enough. But those are just my first thoughts as I'm blinking back into reality. Through the fog, I heard, "Emma, Emma." So I tried to answer, but no sound came out. My arms, they felt so weak, and my body, like, didn't feel recognizable. And when I heard my name being yelled out, I mean, my vision isn't fully back yet, but as I'm hearing my name, I'm like, "What?" But I literally couldn't scream or cry or anything. The energy just wasn't there. So I laid there staring without my vision back, and I'm like, "Okay, what's next?" When it fully started to process to me, I realized it was the anxious voices of my parents. I had ended up being rushed to the ER, and it turned out I had a concussion and then a black eye, but they didn't know what was wrong and just said that my knees were locked and that I needed water. There was this gentleman that came in while I was in the ER still, and they told me I had a concussion and I had plans actually later on in the day to go to one of my best friend's house for her birthday party. And I was dead set on going. I had my outfit ready and plans ready. And then this just all happened. And I was like, nope, I gotta go. So we very much asked the doctor right away, right after I got my diagnosis. And I was like, can I please go? And they were just advising me whatever I felt up to doing, I could do just to be cautious. I had slowly started months before this moment with a headache here and there and a dizzy spell, but like I ignored it. And I just told myself that I'm fine because I had always been, I think you could say, the one who was just clumsy, you know, until this happened. And I was like, okay, something feels so uncertain. And I definitely laughed it off. But in my chest, I definitely felt like it was something a little bit more beyond clumsiness. While I was talking to the doctor about my plans that I had wanted to do, he was very adamant, saying, "Are you sure your knees were not locked while you were curling your hair? Are you sure?" And I was so, I think I felt a little bit crazy because I could have promised my knees were not locked in a certain way where it could have made me faint. And so he was like, "I don't know. I really think your knees were locked." And I was like, of course, I'm thinking to myself, there's no way. Like, what do you mean? But I kind of gave myself the story. Maybe they were, because at the time we had no other explanation of my fainting that led to me hitting my head somewhere that led to my concussion. So I kind of just walked it off and yep, I locked my knees and I didn't drink enough water. Honestly, that was my tipping moment where my days started to blur together and I would wake up, I think, as I would say, bone tired, my chest aching and my heart racing for no reason. Some mornings I would even realize 5 days had passed, like how I said before. Like, no food, no water, like my parents standing over me, my siblings standing over me, and they're like, "Bro, like, what's happening? Are you good?" My muscles ached. Of course, I did dance, and I was quite active, but it started to feel more than an ache and just an unbearable sensation of pain. My hands shook when I would reach for things like the sink or my phone or water. My legs wouldn't always hold me like how they used to. Honestly, this is when it started to get a little bit more on my heavy on my heart than I would have imagine right off the bat. I started to feel invisible, like doctors didn't see me. They couldn't find anything wrong with me. I heard a lot of, "You're young and it's fine." They said words were supposed to reassure me, but instead they made me feel smaller and kind of trapped in my body that was betraying me on a daily. Invisible in a world that couldn't see my pain, screaming. My mind was exhausted, my soul was tired, and still I kept going because even when I couldn't see the way forward, the world would seem dark. I just I kept telling myself it was okay because others around me said it was okay. Looking back now, I probably would not advise that advice to anyone. I definitely kept on pushing on when I definitely needed a break. Maybe a mental rest day or so that my body could catch up. But I would highly advise maybe not persevering to the certain extent that I have in my past. It definitely creates more of a toll mentally and physically than I had realized it would have done in the moment. At the time, I was just holding on to faith because nothing big was being diagnosed. We did have a lot of unanswered questions, but my faith was still holding me, especially when my body was failing me. And my weeks turned into months, and still no one had answers. I feel like we went to doctor after doctor and like test after test, and I had blood drawn and monitors strapped like EKGs and all of the heart tests and veins tests. And I kept asking myself every time, like, why are my results coming back normal? I don't feel normal. And as well with my feelings of not understanding why my tests came back normal, I also got the results. There's nothing concerning going on. And yet my heart still raced and my body still ached. My energy was still vanishing like smoke, and everything looked fine. Like, this is very dramatic, but it kind of felt like a knife twisting slowly into my abdomen, and nobody decided to pull it out. I couldn't explain my exhaustion that clung to me like my second skin, but I was living in a world where my body didn't match my spirit, or at least the passion I wanted to have. I wanted to dance and to laugh and to live like how I used to, but even in the simplest of tasks, it felt impossible. Every single day was a fight against my own body and a battle that the best way I could explain is a battle that I didn't even see the rules for. I felt like I was going into this blindly. So, honestly, let me just say something. FaceTime became my lifeline with my best friends. They were always there, even when I didn't want to talk, and even when I felt too weak to type a message. They listened to me while I cried and I argued and I ignored about all of my medical advice. They honestly were so good about reminding me to hold on when I wanted to give up. And that was kind of the rhythm and the cycle, even up to now in my present time, as I'm telling y'all this. I have another near and dear friend where it came the day that she suggested that I had the same illness as her. She mentioned that, and then something kind of changed. I've seen her walk through her medical challenges from afar, but when she suggested this in our conversation, she started thinking and telling me about her symptoms that she was experiencing that kind of resembled what I was going through. Let's just say I was very invested and I was like, okay, tell me everything, but this is very crazy. She suggested I had POTS. She got diagnosed with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And that name alone sounded frightening and almost unreal. Could this explain the months of dizziness, the fainting, the rapid heartbeats, the fatigue? Like, could it explain the days I didn't realize I hadn't eaten or drinking? And honestly, y'all, I clung to the possibility of that like a lifeline. Even though fear ground at me, like, y'all, having a possible diagnosis in the midst of just the sound of crickets, it was very encouraging, even though it was something that I almost dreaded. Now, even though I was filled with such possibility that I finally found my diagnosis, and even though I said it did come with fear, I was just wondering how this would be manageable and if this would be something I'd have to live for forever. Like, how would it affect my dance or my school or my ministry or my life? That question, and honestly, all those questions came faster than I could answer them. But at least at the moment there, I had some direction on where to look for. Through it all, my best friend stayed, my rock, and my voice of reason, my safe place, and honestly, that friendship, well, I still have them as my best friends, of course. But during then, that support system didn't just comfort me, they helped me fight. They made sure I followed up with my doctors and reminded me to rest, to drink water, to fight for my body like I fought for my spirit. I was watching the slow and learning the painful truth about faith and how faith can keep you upright, but sometimes your body needs to fight for its own. Even in the darkness, I held on to hope, and I didn't understand what the future would look like. I didn't understand the hours, the days, and the weeks that had disappeared into illness. But in those moments when I felt weakest, I remember God had carried me through harder storms before. My body might be breaking, but my faith, through the shakenness, still breathed. So the breakdown wasn't the end. Fortunately, it was just the beginning of something new. Something I didn't understand yet, and the truth, fragile as it was enough to keep me going. After months of tests and appointments and endless questions, I finally got a hint of what might be wrong with me. And I know that's something maybe a little bit harsh to say, like, what's wrong with me? But I finally found what was causing all of this, and it actually was POTS. But even then, it wasn't simple. The cardiologist wasn't fully sure at first, but he put me on a heart monitor to wear for 2 whole weeks. And oh my goodness, I hated that thing. It was awful and bulky and made me hyper aware of every single heartbeat I felt in my chest. But for some reason, y'all, I kind of also loved it because it had a little button I could push whenever my heart did something abnormal. And so pressing that button gave me a tiny sense of control in a situation that felt completely out of control. So, when I talk about wearing my heart monitor, I will say that I loved it for the most part because I was able to push the button and they gave me a little log book and I would have to describe why I pushed the button each time and my symptoms that followed it. But, anyways, once the 2 weeks were up, we mailed it back for review, and then we were just waiting. The constant wondering of if it finally told us what was wrong with me for so long was crazy. And so the cardiologist finally called. The news was not immediate clarity, but it was just the next step. It still wasn't an official diagnosis, but I had to see more doctors, more clinics, and some more specialists. And every appointment kind of came with a little bit of hope, but also fear tangled up into it. Every test reminded me how fragile my body had been and how long this journey has been. But finally, after all the waiting and uncertainty, the emotional roller coaster, revealed my own diagnosis: POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It was both a relief and a shock, similar to like when I first discovered the possibility of me having it. Relief because finally someone could name this storm that I had been living in, but shock because it wasn't something that would just go away. It was something I would have to navigate every day. And even though I celebrated finally having answers, I knew the work wasn't over, and POTS didn't stop. It didn't pause. It didn't give you time to adjust slowly, but at least now I had direction. I knew what I was up against, at least the label of it, and that made all the difference for me. Then I had to start the journey of figuring out how to live with it. So getting my diagnosis was supposed to be the finish line. So after much confusion, fear, appointments, and people brushing off my symptoms, hearing the words, "You have POTS," felt like a moment of victory. Finally having an answer. For one brief moment, I naively thought that meant help was coming. Answers meant solutions, right? But I quickly learned what most people don't understand. Some diagnoses don't come with a cure. Some come with a life sentence of management. And that's when I realized the battle wasn't over, it was just beginning. I thought having a name for what was going on with me, for what was wrong with me, would make life easier, but it didn't. Instead, life started closing in. Suddenly, everything I had consequences. Like standing too fast, walking too long, heat, crowds, stress, and even taking a shower. Yeah. So that could all leave me shaky and desperate for air. I had started living like a fragile version of who I was, or who I wanted to be. It was almost like my body was made of thin glass that could break at any moment. It wasn't just physical change. I had to change physically, mentally, emotionally, and every routine I used to know. But the hardest part wasn't the symptoms. It was everything I started losing. I was behind on school. I missed dance. I had to miss work more times than I wanted to. My friends made plans, and I learned how to say, maybe it just depends on how I feel that day. Even though I already knew the answer was going to be my body controlled me, not the other way around. So I didn't have the freedom or the spontaneousness anymore. I couldn't be the girl who would just say yes and show up. I had to calculate everything, how long I'd be standing, whether I could overheat, what my heart might do, if my body would hold up. I wasn't just tired, I was grieving. I was missing out on my own life. And people still didn't understand. I didn't look sick. I didn't have a cast or stitches or anything people could see. I had an invisible illness, which meant I had to live in a body that betrayed me while also defending myself to people who didn't believe me. While going through all of the battles that my body was throwing at me, I was still faced with the comments of, "You're too young to feel that bad," or "You're probably just dehydrated," or the "Everyone gets dizzy sometimes, you're overthinking it." Honestly, they probably did not come out of a place of purposefully tearing somebody down. But while living all of these symptoms and having to relearn my body, while trying to also reassure myself that I was not crazy and not lying, those words cut deeper than anyone will ever understand unless you've gone through it yourself. Because I did not want the attention, I just wanted to feel normal again. People think living with chronic illness means you're always on the edge of breaking down. But really, what happens is worse. You learn how to pretend that you're fine. You learn how to stand still when your vision starts to sparkle black. You learn to smile when your heart rate is pounding out of your chest, or how to hold conversations when your body feels like it's about to collapse. You learn how to hide it, and sometimes hiding it hurts more than the illness itself. One of the hardest days I faced was on my brother's wedding day. Logan got married, and it was supposed to be one of the most beautiful moments of their lives and our lives, and it was. But behind my smile in every picture was a battle no one else could see. As I stood up beside my brother and my now sister in law, the room started to slowly tilt. My heart was racing even though I was barely moving. Sweat gathered in the back of my neck, and maybe that's a little bit of too much information, but my vision started to flicker like someone was slowly dimming the lights, and I focused on just standing upright, breathing slowly, telling myself over and over, "Do not pass out. Not today, not here." I had prepared like it was war, extra salt, water, deep breathing, everything I knew that might keep me from crashing. Still, my body was trying to fight me. I could feel my body threatening to give out. I remember gripping my bouquet so tightly my fingers hurt, and I kept thinking, "Please, God, just let me make it through this. Logan deserves his day. Liberty deserves her day. I will not ruin it. I will not collapse in front of them. Please just let me stand here." And people knew I was struggling, but they had no idea just how close I was of hitting the floor in that very same moment. That day was beautiful. Not that long ago, just made a year of being married. That day honestly went pretty smoothly, and it was a beautiful wedding, and they were beautiful, and it was a great time. But turning it back to my POV, it broke something in me that day. Not because I was embarrassed or afraid, even though I had been, still am sometimes, but I realized how cruel this illness could be. It didn't care that it was my brother's wedding day. It didn't care that if I prayed before I stood up there, it could still happen. It didn't care that I was fighting with everything inside me. It did not care about the memories or the moments or family. Illness doesn't take off days, not even for weddings. But that moment also showed me something. Even when my body screamed to give up, something inside me refused. I stood in that storm, trembling and unbroken, and maybe that's when I started to understand something I hadn't before, that strength doesn't always look powerful. Sometimes strength is standing when everything around you wants to collapse. Sometimes strength is not giving up, even when no one would blame you if you did. Living in the storm is hard, is unpredictable, exhausting, and even lonely. But storms don't last forever. And even while they rage, life still has moments worth fighting for. My life didn't end with my diagnosis. It changed, it got harder, but it also began teaching me something deep. You don't really know who you are until life forces you to fight for yourself. Especially in my early days of diagnosis, I had to really ask myself, are you fighting still? And is your life worth fighting for? If so, you're not done fighting. Okay, y'all, that does not mean that I still do not have storms of my own. And I would even dare to say that my storms, I think everybody might could say, your storms feel like they get bigger each time. You might not think that there's a way out or that there is even a fight worth fighting for. Hypothetically, you don't have an umbrella, but then you make it through. Just to clarify, that was just a experience that I had that one time, and it kind of was a subtle drop that my brother got married to the love of his life, and it was great and it was beautiful, and that day was not about me at all. But also, I wanted to share that moment because it kind of left an imprint on my life of experiencing something so important, so exciting, and something so beautiful, and still having to deal with chronic illness. I really realized that day that chronic illness did not pause, it keeps going. So you're going to keep going, it's going to keep going. And especially if you don't rest, yeah. Events might have been happening very fast in life and in the speed. But in my mind and my heart, it felt like everything was moving so slow, but at the same time in such a haze and a fog that I couldn't keep up with. From the crazy things happening to my diagnosis to the storm that I didn't know I would have to keep revisiting, to still having to choose faith, especially when you're met with suffering. I'll kind of talk about that more in the next episode when my faith met suffering. Like I'm sure everybody who knows me personally or who has talked with me probably could guess that I'm most likely a little bit dramatic, a little bit very much, a lot of it emotional. As these events, the ones that I've talked about and the ones that have happened that I just haven't talked about yet, and the ones that are ongoing in my life now, I definitely feel everything, but probably not as I should. I'm just saying in the timeline that I should be reacting to some of these things, I kind of just keep pushing through. And so when I had this laid on my heart from the Lord to start writing down all of my emotions and all that I was going through so that I could review it and look back on it, and so that I could kind of give it to Him in more of a visual way, I was able to really rethink every experience and look back deeper and in my emotions and in my feelings and in my thoughts, not just in the events that were happening. I think it's very easy for me when something is coming my way to just say, whoop, let's handle it, let's get through this. And then when I'm over it, like how I was writing about these events, I was able to remember my thoughts and really write them down in such a deep and intimate way. I definitely had no clue at all that any part of my life would become a book, let alone book worthy. But for some reason, the Lord used this experience already so far as a quite literal lifeline, at least for me in my life. I had never been able to keep up a diary growing up at all. I would always kind of open up a notebook and try to write down, like, dear diary, like, this is my day and this is what happened. And I probably did that, honestly. Let me give myself some grace here. A week in a row, maybe. Maybe one day I would have to write about 2 days because I really tried to keep it up. I was a Disney Channel kid and they always wrote Dear Diary. I wanted to be so cool. Anywho, this time I just started thinking about writing down my thoughts, my feelings, and it was going straight to the Lord. Like how I said, a visual way of me talking to the Lord. And so then it kind of became a digital diary, but spiritual version. And then my perspective started changing. And I was like, I got to write this for others because I don't know what I would have done not knowing another person going through at least a little bit of what I was going through. Like my friend who has POTS, who pointed me in the right direction and still does. And yet I still felt so lonely and crazy and alienated and almost embarrassed of the severity of my emotions. I would have gone crazy if I didn't know anybody like that. And so I think the Lord really, really, really laid on my heart to write down my experiences and what I've been through and my testimony turned into a passion on my end for me to let people know that they're not alone and that they're not alienated and they're not crazy because I mean, I'm a little bit crazy, but I wasn't lying. I was going through these things. But that's kind of the context on where this came from and how I got here. The book is not published, and I think I've mentioned on my page before on Instagram and Facebook. It's not published, but it might be one day. So this podcast would kind of go hand in hand with it, talking about the chapters and my life and what I'm going through and the thoughts, and kind of always pointing it back to the Lord. Me saying kind of always literally means always. Everything in life, like, that is the Lord. So, with me also saying that, I hope that the Lord takes this wherever His plan desires. But also, it really would be so very cool if I was able to hear people who have gone through similar things and who have experienced the Lord in miraculous ways. This podcast will never be something to glorify myself, ever. And if it ever starts to take a turn for the worst, I publicly invite somebody to come kick me in my shin. Please and thank you. Because in reality, it is all about God. And that's also something that I pray that this new experience teaches me. I also definitely understand my problems will not be fixed or that they will not just poof and disappear after this. But this is also something that will hold me accountable, talking about God and God's love, not privately, but being able to share confidently what the Lord has done. In the next episode, I do want to pick up where I left off and continue the story about having POTS and how it really started to get hard. But I really wanted to thank y'all for deciding to click play and listen along. Like I said, I really, really, really hope that this isn't just the new fresh scoop on Emma's life. It's the new fresh scoop on, whoa, the Lord is great and He's done amazing things. And I can't wait to hear more. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. Y'all know what I'm saying. Anywho, thank y'all so, so, so much. And I'll talk to y'all next time. Bye.